All right, Jake. Jake, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I'm from a suburb of Chicago, northwest suburbs. I'm from a town called Wakanda. So,
Tell me about your family growing up. You had mom and dad.
yeah, I had a mom and dad growing up. I thought everything was normal that was kind of going on. I realized when I was like 13, 15 that everything I had been experiencing when I was young was anything but normal. I grew up. My dad was an angry guy. He was pretty secretive. He actually had a fake LLC for insurance sales, but our house was custom made, and the crawl space was actually converted into grow rooms. And this was the '90s. It was for weed, so weed was still pretty illegal, and so that's kind of what he did under the table for work. I didn't find that out till I was about 15 or so, and my dad was also a pedophile growing up. He's a sadist. He likes children, and I saw the bad end of that.
He was convicted.
No, not that I know of. My dad's not convicted. My dad got away. He's still out there. I confronted him about all this about a few years ago, and he admitted to it all over camera. Actually, he leaned in the camera. He kind of didn't confirm nor deny at first, and I know a little bit about how these people work, so I had my phone rolling, and I kept on pushing my accusations at him, calling him a pedophile, and eventually he leaned in the camera and he said, "And so what? Get over it." He said, "I did," and he doesn't care, and that's that. I gave it to the authorities, and they launched an investigation, but I guess the authorities, we know how that goes. So,
So your
um,
childhood went in what direction?
my childhood was, it was good and bad. I hear of some people's childhoods they didn't have food on the table. Constant beatings and neglect. That wasn't really my childhood. My mother was around somewhat. My dad was around somewhat, and in the day, in the light, what people saw, I was a well taken care of kid. And I'm thankful for that. I never went hungry. I wasn't beat for no reason. But in the dark, my dad was getting a hold of me and doing some really, really just pure evil. I don't have any words for it other than this was pure evil. This was even past pedophilia and having sex with a child. This was sexual child torture. Um, Dilating me, making fun of me, having sex with me. My dad had a friend too, who they would take me off to I think hotel rooms, or maybe it was the guy's house, and strip me down, beat me, humiliate me, pinch me, and penetrate me. And yeah, my mom eventually, obviously, my mom eventually found out. I had repressed a lot of these memories till I was in my teen years, and what opened them back up for me, I remember growing up, I always had such a hard time going to the bathroom. It hurt really bad going to the bathroom. And my mom found out about this, and she hated my dad. We all kind of hated my dad, but we had to live with him. So, yeah, the abuse kind of stopped around the age of 8 or 9 from my recollection. And I think my mom had threatened to call the police on what he was doing. And that put an end to it. From
So
there,
so it
both
started at what age?
as far back as my memories go, I remember he was doing wrong things. I would assume from infancy, but I have a 2-year-old in my life. He's almost 3, and I know what was going on when I was 2 or 3. I remember quite a bit from being a kid. Um, so it went on for quite some time. I can even remember not visual recordings, but they would take audio recordings of me getting raped and just screaming bloody murder, man, in these audio recordings. And I'd actually bit one of these pedophiles on the side of the face while I was getting molested once. And I think my punishment for that is my dad took one of these audio recordings of me getting raped, and he sat me down and he had me listen to them when I was just 4 or 5 years old. And, you know, I grew up hunting and stuff. It sounded like someone was killing a rabbit over this audio recording, just gurgling, screaming. And I remember my dad looking at me and laughing, and I brought him the recording and I set it on his desk. You know, I was just a scared kid. I didn't know what was going on. He looked at me and he kind of laughed and he says, "You don't like listening to that, do you?" I like to play with those voice recording tapes. I know if I talked into it, I could play it back, but it was an old school visual recording thing, so you could play it in reverse too, and it would kind of sound like weird sort of demonic things, you know. So my dad had given me these audio recordings of me getting raped by grown men, and the first time I listened to it, my little kid brain, I guess I was an intelligent kid, I said, well, it must be in reverse because this just sounds like gurgling. And I would play it both ways and it still kind of sounded the same. That's some of the harshest memories that I have, and I don't have any understanding. I guess sadism. He was a sadist. He liked hurting people, and he liked watching all that. So.
You had siblings?
Yeah, I had an older sister. Yeah, from my memories, I know she didn't have, there was some things happening to her too. But I also remember my dad explaining to me that my mom was a lot more protective of my sister than she was of me. So I guess, I'm not sure, you know. I know a lot of bad stuff happened to me, but I actually haven't been in contact with my older sister since about the age of 12, 11. I've only spoken a handful of words to her since then. So the abuse stopped when I was around 9 or 10, and I noticed real quickly that both my parents were being exceptionally nice to me. Whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And I wasn't stupid. I knew what was going on. They were getting ready to have a divorce, and both parties wanted custody of me. Divorce happened when I was 12, and I actually chose to go with my dad. My mom was a really angry woman. She screamed a lot. She hit sometimes, and my sister went with my mom. I chose to go with my dad simply because he was nicer to me, and I had forgotten some of the harsher abuse. I remembered having to sleep with him and stuff, but I didn't remember a lot of the sadist style behavior that came back when I was older and I started having sex with people. And like I said earlier, it came back through me remembering my childhood, and just it hurt so bad to go to the bathroom. And I thought that was normal. I talked with other people. I talked with some of my girlfriends when I was 17, 18, growing up, and as far as what my childhood was like with my dad, and they told me that's not normal. And it just led to a lot of, investigating my childhood, and these memories slowly came back. So by that time, I had already found out what drugs were. I grew up playing basketball, so I kept it pretty straight until about the age of 16. I put my frustrations into basketball, and I was really, really good at basketball. I mean, I wasn't a very articulate, high IQ player. I was more the Dennis Rodman, kind of Kevin Garnett. I was a mean basketball player. Yeah, I could dunk the ball at a young age. I'd get a lot of rebounds. And I continued playing through high school, but I had already started using drugs at that point, and they started to take their toll on me. So, yeah, I had met a best friend when I was about 14 or 15, and I already hated my dad at that point. So, and I think he knew I hated him. I didn't even stay in my own house at that point. I stayed at their house for most of the time. My basketball uniforms were there. My school clothes were there. Yeah, I called this my friend's mom. She wasn't my mom, but she called me her son. So I kind of, stayed with that family for for most of my upbringing. I went real downhill with drugs after graduating high school. I started shooting heroin. I started smoking crack. I learned the layout of Chicago. I'm not familiar with the south side of Chicago. I'm familiar with the west side of Chicago. Garfield Park, Austin, Cicero, and just learning street life, you know. I was never an addict that went sick. I always kind of, I don't want to say, you know, an intelligent addict, but they are out there, you know. You know, we look at addicts and we think these people are, you know, stupid. And a lot of them are. But for some of these old drug addicts, people that have been in the game for 10, 15 years, the amount of IQ they need to sustain their habit, to not die, to live this street life, they're actually smarter than, in my opinion, they're smarter than a lot of, you know, working class people. It's just, you know, their habits and who they are, they choose to use that intelligence in all the wrong way. And that was me in my early 20s. I sold a lot of things, allegedly, and I used a lot of drugs. I stopped using drugs when I was about 26 years old. I'm 29 now, so it's just the negatives started to outweigh the positives. I knew quite a few homeless people. I had friends that started to go to prison for different things. The first time I got clean, I relapsed. Golly, I mean, I tried to get clean, it seems, you know, 50, 60, 70 times, and every time I relapsed, but I kept on trying, and I got back into working out. I got back into playing pickup basketball, and at this point, I've been sober about, you know, 2.5, 3 years. I don't have an exact date. And there was a relapse about 1.5 years ago with some hydrocodone. They were from a doctor for a surgery, but I didn't need them.
In relationships in your life?
Yeah. Relationships, you know, I had a girlfriend for most of my drug addiction. I grew up with a lot of gender dysphoria too, you know. I was a pretty queer kid growing up until I started getting made fun of it for like the long hair and the ear piercings. So I pushed that part of me away. I got real tough. I started lifting weights, but the gender dysphoria was always there. I came out as transgender kind of in the midst of my drug addiction, and I had a handful of memories back in my head about my childhood. I just chose not to acknowledge them, or really give them any weight as to who I was as a person. Right now, sitting here, I can remember there was a lot of weird stuff going on with my dad. A lot of costumes. I mean, there was a puppy costume, which was naked with a collar. There was little girl costumes. There was little boy sailor costumes that I would have to wear when I was with these pedophiles, whether it be my dad or acquaintances, friends of my dad. So now I kind of attribute that to my gender dysphoria. I actually don't have a lot of gender dysphoria at this moment here. I'm happy being a guy. Maybe I'm a little androgynous. Some people say yes, some people say no. But yeah, I came out as transgender when I was 22 or 23. I had a boyfriend. He's a really, really nice, smart guy. I can actually give him some of the credit for getting me sober. I was a drug addict at the time. He was sober. He's an incredibly intelligent guy. And there was times where I would relapse and he would still hang around with me. I was having sex with him one night, and another handful of memories kind of came back, and I was pretty devastated. It led to me, I could no longer have sex with him. Just the act of having sex with another guy as a guy, it was so traumatizing for me. I remember one time I had tried I had been sober for a few weeks, and I had tried having sex with my boyfriend, and really quickly, I mean, we started making out, and I started shaking, and I ran to the toilet, I threw up. Um, I threw up a few times. I was shaking. I was sweating, and I started to realize that, I'm a pretty traumatized person. The drug addiction, the gender dysphoria, the transgendered stuff. Thank God I was never incredibly sexually promiscuous, and no STDs or anything like that. So I'm really thankful for all that. But yeah, so I didn't do anything very quickly, but I started to realize that I wasn't transgender. I have a girlfriend now. I'm still friends with my boyfriend from that. He's a really smart, really intelligent guy, and he's been with me from the time I was a drug addict till now, till I'm clean. And so yeah, relationships, I've had them with men, I've had them with women, and yeah, I'm really thankful that I ran into a guy like that could be that patient and stuff. And so yeah, I'm still a traumatized person.
Do you deal with like emotional issues like depression or anger or anxiety, anything like that?
Yeah, I have a bit of depression and anxiety. I don't take any medications for it. I refuse to be on any doctor's medications or anything. Um, I don't use any drugs anymore. I'm kind of a pothead on and off. I do smoke pot. I try to keep it to responsible use, and even if I'm not smoking pot, I usually take edibles before sleep because my dreams are pretty rough. Just some of the dreams that I have to relive while I'm sleeping. I'd prefer not to remember them when I wake up, and weed can do that for me. So yeah, I eat edibles before sleep almost every night because I don't want to remember my dreams.
And the harder drugs that you were doing were what?
Hmm?
What were the harder drugs that you were using?
A lot of opiates, man. Opiate-based painkillers, which kind of led into heroin. I started sniffing at first. I learned how to shoot up, so I was shooting a lot of heroin till I was about 22 or 23. Allegedly, supposedly, some people thought I sold a lot of coke. I never really had a taste for coke. I had tried snorting it, I had tried shooting it. It was just not my stuff until one day I had tried smoking it, free-base cocaine, and I actually kind of enjoyed that. Um, and that was where my drug addiction got really bad. I started smoking a lot of crack with the dope. It only lasted for about 6 months until I realized that this isn't sustainable, and it'll take my life. If it doesn't take my life, it'll take my head. And I'll just be left a shell of a person, or I'll go to prison for one thing or another. I had a few friends go to prison for drug-induced homicides and gun charges. And I knew I didn't want that. I was kind of in the world alone. I had my so-called adoptive family, as I call them. They knew I was struggling, not to the extent that I'm talking about now. But yeah, getting out of it wasn't easy. Like I said, it took me 50, 60 tries and constantly relapsing. But, it took a lot of acknowledging my trauma that I went through as a kid. A lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, and it hasn't been easy. Even these past couple of years, I've had more memories come back of what my dad was doing. And I'm still sober through it now. I guess I just found healthier ways to deal with it. I play a lot of basketball again in different pickup leagues. I work out. I read just a ton. I'm an avid reader.
Did you try therapy?
I have tried therapy. I've tried not to any real help. I've tried therapists, and I had one rescheduling on me a lot. I had another one who was like really anti-gay, anti-LGBT, and I didn't really feel comfortable being with her. The best therapy that I've had is actually meditation and yoga. I've had a few yoga teachers kind of take me under their wing and guide me through some of my PTSD and my flashbacks, and just breathing, stretching, acknowledging that, I'm a pretty messed up person. And that's all right. There's a lot of messed up people. I mean, there's homeless people that aren't messed up. There's people that are homeless that do drugs that have had normal childhoods. And there's other people that are successful millionaires that have, had childhoods similar to mine. And, a lot of us are messed up. Some of us acknowledge it, some of us don't. And, it's all right. That for me, that's been the best therapy, is just yoga and meditation.
Do you feel like you were once trans or gay or both, and now you're not, or is it just you're just choosing this for now?
Well, as far as my thoughts on that, I mean, I grew up being bisexual. I've had girlfriends, I've had boyfriends. At this point in life, I'm not sure if I'm only interested in my girlfriend. I'm not interested in other women. I'm a monogamous person. That being said, I'm also not interested in other men. If my girlfriend wasn't around, I still wouldn't be interested in men. I would only be interested in women. And as far as, my gender, I used to be quite a bit more androgynous, quite a bit more feminine looking near the end of my drug addiction, and now I'm not. I view gender as a spectrum. And it changes throughout our life, as does our sexuality. So I think for most people, having some sense of androgyny is healthy. I don't know if anybody, if you just want my opinion, I don't know if anybody is transgender or is not transgender. As I said, I think gender is a spectrum. I'm not out here to, to hate on the transgender community or call them mentally ill or anything. I don't think I was pulled into the transgender community and, brainwashed by them or anything like that. I don't hold any beliefs like that. So yeah, I view gender as a spectrum. As far as me dealing with some of my issues, I think there was kind of a form of mastery involved with my childhood and my trauma that I went through, and I had a boyfriend, and I read a lot. So I read that when something really, really bad happens to you when you're a kid, two things can happen. You'll either never want to be put in that situation again, you'll be a traumatized person, or as you grow up, you'll try to recreate it and relive it, and you will probably re-traumatize yourself as a way to master what had happened to you as a kid. And I see this everywhere I go. I have more than one friend who's a trans woman who was sexually abused by her father when she was a little boy. They remember it. I have another trans woman friend who her mom will swear that the dad was sexually abusing her little boy, who's now a woman. And both of those trans women have a lot of sex, and I'm not even here to bash that. If that's what helps them live and helps them master their trauma, it is what it is. I have no ill feelings in my heart towards anybody other than sadists and pedophiles, so. My way of dealing with it, I guess there was a form of mastery involved for a bit until I had some memories come back that were so harsh. I just couldn't be with guys anymore, and then I had a really slow transition kind of back to where I am now. I lift weights, I play basketball, I paint my nails, but I am a guy. I'm happy being a guy. I'm only interested in women. And that's my way of dealing with it.
Are you at the happiest point in your life right now?
The happiest I've ever been? No. That other family, I had a brother. He passed away 2 years ago. About a year and a half ago. Yeah, my happiest was just 1 second. Yeah, my happiest was with my brother. So yeah, he was also a drug addict. We saw eye to eye pretty much on everything. I mean, we were brothers. We could finish each other's sentences. He was with me through like the whole transgender stuff too. I remember coming out to him um, one day. I had started being a little more androgynous, and he always knew. I mean, we had been friends since we were 13, 14 years old. I told him one day that I think I'm transgender, and he was right in the middle of talking about one of his favorite animes, and I kind of interrupted him and just blurted it out. And he looked at me and he was like, you interrupted me. He didn't care at all. He was just like, we can talk about that later, but I'm talking about this anime right now. I don't even think we talked about it later, It was just how it was.
He passed away from an overdose?
Yeah, we kind of got sober together. We each took our own roads. We relapsed separately, but we'd gotten sober together. The only issue was my brother was a drinker. And with the drinking, there was some Xanax involved. If you're familiar with drugs and brain chemistry, drinking and Xanax, they hit the same receptors in the brain. So you can give an alcoholic and withdrawal Xanax and it'll get them right. And conversely, you can give a Xanax addict alcohol and it'll kind of keep them right somewhat, much like heroin to pain pills. And my brother had never really shook that monkey of drinking and Xanax. I never really played around with much Xanax, and I'm not a drinker. I was much more of a hardcore drug addict. And my brother never smoked as much crack as I had smoked. But he always had that monkey on his back, and he started going downhill really bad about a year before he died. I mean, he had tried to quit Xanax cold turkey. He had the seizures. I remember waiting for him to get out of the hospital, and he came out of the hospital, and he was like a different person. I mean, to anybody watching this, if you're gonna play with drugs, don't ever play with Xanax. And I always knew that as a young drug addict. You can quit heroin, you can quit crack, you can quit all these things, and for the most part, you'll go back to being the person that you were when you started using drugs. Xanax and meth, those two things are different stories. If you get far into those drugs, you can get sober, but the person that you once were will, in my opinion, will be gone. So my brother got out of the hospital, and yeah, he was kind of a different person. He was nervous all the time. He could barely hold a conversation. I tried to be there for him, but he always wanted to be alone. And he had already had one kidney from drinking and drugs. And I knew he was fooling around after he got out of the hospital with Xanax and alcohol and things. And he ended up passing away from he was real drunk one night, and he was playing with a can of air duster. And I guess there's a chemical in air duster, tetrafluorocarbon. It's a very heavy molecule. It displaces oxygen from the lungs. That's how they get their high on different inhalants. It's actually not really a high. It's more so just depriving the brain of oxygen. You can think of the choking game that young boys play in high school, which my brother did play. I never played the choking game. I thought myself above such activities as a young queer kid growing up. So yeah, that's how my brother passed away. I actually saw him pass away. I was at a neighbor's house hanging out with their kids, and I had gotten a phone call from our dad, his dad. They were on vacation, and he said I should go check up on Steve. I guess my brother had called his parents in kind of a frantic state, and I came back to the house and heard a sound like someone trying to start a car that wouldn't start, I was with the neighbor at the time, and we ran around the corner of the house, and we saw my brother there, and he had a significant amount of brain damage from the oxygen deprivation already. I got into MMA after basketball, so I kind of knew some of the signs of like CTE, and when people get knocked out, he had some of this going on right before he was dying, right before he died. He died there once, and then I guess they resuscitated him in the ambulance, and he died again on the way to the hospital. And you know, it's funny. My brother was also pretty queer growing up, but he was straight. He always had beautiful girlfriends, surprisingly. But we were having a conversation about 2 months before he died, and he actually disclosed to me that there are some things he's never told anybody before, and his family's Mormon. His mom was a convert into the Mormon religion, and Mormons treat converts differently than they do people that are born as Mormon. So my brother, being born as Mormon, would spend a lot of time in this church as a young boy, actually away from his mom. And he told me he was sexually abused by the Mormon, by some of the guys in this Mormon church. And in the town where I grew up, in the suburb of Chicago, there was actually a higher up of a big Mormon collection of churches that's in prison right now for molesting young boys. So I don't like religion. You know, my dad is a Christian. My biological dad is a Christian. He's pretty devout about it too. He's wandered from his faith, and he's come back to it. Now he says he's a born again Christian. He speaks to churches about how hard he had it growing up, and you know, I'm the evil, you know, cross-dressing drug addict that's not a Christian. Yeah, so you know, that's not the case.
What are you afraid of now? What are you worried about?
I'm most worried about myself. I'll never go back to drugs. You know, I'll be honest, it's hard for me to hold a job sometimes. Maybe it's just the life that I've lived growing up, not working often and doing other things for money that paid a lot better than working. So right now, I'm most worried about myself as a traumatized person. You know, for traumatized people, we can really be our own worst enemies. I mean, we're in LA right now. I mean, you could look outside and see a lot of people that are indeed their own worst enemy. And I'm at a point in life where I don't want to be that way. I want to work with myself. I want to work through this. I don't want a normal job. I don't want to just be a worker bee. I want to find a way to help people or do something meaningful in the world. And that's hard to do. You know, I've volunteered at a lot of women's shelters, like domestic violence homes, since I've gotten sober, because sometimes I feel like if my mom had a safe place to go growing up, that it wouldn't have been as bad. Maybe she would have left my dad and not allowed her kids to be in the presence of a sadistic pedophile. And she tried. I mean, I remember going to stay with her mom, which was my grandma at the time. And as a child, you don't understand. You know, I actually remember saying, I miss my dad, I miss my mom. And my mom telling me, you know, she's sorry about that, but I shouldn't be around him. And then we would move back into the house with him, and the abuse would continue because he knew he could get away with it. So yeah, you know, I want a job where I can help people. And, you know, my biggest fears are just, as a traumatized person, sometimes I isolate myself. And just working through all this trauma, you know. Yeah, another big fear of mine is I'm afraid of him. I'm still worried that he has some sense of power over me. I even worry about coming on this podcast, you know. I don't know if he's ever gonna reach out to me again one day, trying to sue me for defamation or anything. I believe I already brought it up how I had confronted him over what he had done to me. And he actually leaned in my recording phone as I was confronting him, and he was like, yeah, I did what I did to you, and so what? Get over it. Kind of taunting me. He's proud of what he's done deep down. And I, there's just, I know I've watched some of your videos, Mark, as far as getting out of these circles of trauma. And love, understanding, and forgiveness is going to be one of our only ways out. And it's hard for me to find any of those. I definitely don't have any understanding as to why anybody would want to do something like this to a kid. My only guess is that it happened to him when he was a boy. And his solution, and it's not a solution, but his solution to make himself feel better is to do it to other little boys. And I don't understand any of that. I don't have any love for pedophiles, for sadistic people, especially people that are going to go and do this to a child. I just can't fathom. And the last one is forgiveness. There's actually some days where I've gotten really close to forgiving him. I'm sober now. I smoke pot at night. And maybe I'm not sober because there's been a couple instances where I've tried psilocybin mushrooms in small doses. And I can remember about a year ago, after my brother had passed, I'd taken a small dose of psilocybin mushrooms, and I started with my yoga practice and meditation. I was going to journal some, play guitar, draw, and as these mushrooms kicked in, I felt sorry for my dad, like really sorry. I mean, I started crying because in that moment, I couldn't fathom what it was like to be him. I felt really bad for him. I mean, I was like sobbing by myself. That's how bad I felt for my dad. And if I could have connected with him in that moment, I would have forgiven him. And I would have been worried about the salvation of his soul. I'm in line with a lot of Buddhist principles. So I know it's within me to forgive him, and just because of that little story I told. But it's intermittent, and that's kind of what I'm working on. I'd like to forgive him in a sense, but it's hard when you confront someone that was raping you. We can invent a lot of other words for it: child molestation, pedophilia, but the best word for it is he's a child rapist. He rapes children forcibly. When you confront someone like this and you find out that they enjoy rubbing it in your face, yeah, so what? Get over it. It's really hard to forgive him. I've offered to pay for therapy for him and I to go to therapy. He doesn't want anything to do with it. So I guess it's a journey I'm going to have to take on my own. As far as understanding forgiveness and love. And if I can't forgive him and understand it and come out of it with a sense of love, I just don't want to live my life with hate any longer, because it really inhibits a lot of what I want to do. You said, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of living my life as a hateful person. And I'm not where I want to be. I do have a lot of hate in my heart towards pedophiles, towards these types of people, towards the politicians that give these people 2 to 3 years in jail, and then they get out and do the same thing again. I mean, you can go on the sex offenders registry. There's probably 15 pedophiles within a few miles of me at any point in America. And they're repeat offenders. And I don't want to rile myself up right now, which would be easy to do. But I don't want to live the rest of my life, a hateful person who's consumed by the fact that pedophiles do exist. A lot of times they're treated better than their victims. And I guess that's one of my biggest fears. So
All right, Jake, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark, and thanks for all the work you do.
I
So
wish you lots of luck with your journey.
thanks.
Thank you very much.